Welcome back to the Level Up Leader podcast, where we dive into the minds of trailblazing executives, thought leaders, and change makers who are redefining leadership one level at a time. My name is Michael King. I'm an executive coach, creator of our Teams methodology, and leader of Teams.coach, where we simplify leadership through clarity, strategy, and systems. Now, today's guest is the definition of bold leadership and entrepreneurial grit. Jeff Hazlett is a global business celebrity, Hall of Fame speaker, best-selling author, and chairman and founder of the C-Suite Network. He's known for his no-nonsense style and larger-than-life presence. Jeffrey has helped shape the executive landscape of Fortune 100 companies and beyond. From cowboy roots to C-Suite influence, this episode is packed with gold on how to lead with intention, market with boldness, and scale with impact. Whether you're building your brand, driving transformation, or just simply trying to cut through the noise, this episode drops some serious insight that will challenge the way that you lead. So grab your notebook, open up that note app, and let's get into it. All right, Mr. Jeffrey Hayzlett, welcome to the Level Up Leader podcast. Great to have you with us today.
Hey, it's good to be on a show, and especially your show, because you're part of our network, and as we talked about, we like each other. So that's a pretty good deal.
I know, man. It's like, I always tell people, like, you attract whatever you make visible, and you attract the right things by having the right people around you. And so it's been great to get to know you and have you as a friend as well. So I can't tell you how much I appreciate you giving time to be here today with us.
Well, that was proven to me yesterday. I got goosebumps. I was at the New York Stock Exchange yesterday hanging out with a bunch of people, and in the historic boardroom, which is a massive room inside the New York Stock Exchange, and it's a very rare place for people to get to go. But I was there for a little bit of a partnership meeting, and I was running into people I hadn't seen for a long time, and it felt so good. You know what I mean? It's like, because of COVID and all the stuff we went through, it was like 5 years of crap. And yep. I feel like we finally, we've got it all washed off of us, and we seem to be coming out of it. And it was one of those days where I got to hug and, a bunch of good people, and it was a good day. So love those.
It's powerful. And you've been in quite a few different circles. You've wore more hats than I think anybody. I was actually bragging about you to one of our other clients, to where it's like, they said, I was telling them that you're coming on the podcast. And they said, what is the one of the biggest things that you've learned by kind of being around Jeff Hazlett? And I said, the thing that impresses me about Jeff is that he makes the most of every moment that he's in. And
I try, yeah.
But like for me, I tell people all the time that I'm a little bit of a closet introvert who plays an extrovert on TV, right? But that's something where it's like, even when it's uncomfortable, I've seen you actually figure out ways for you to be able to create an experience or create an opportunity out of whether it's speaking to a room of 25, like you did for us at Omaha Leaders, Lead Omaha event, or I've seen you speak to thousands at a time as well. So today I wanted to kind of break this down into a little bit of the humanity of Jeff Hazlett a little bit, because I think that this is interesting as well. But going back to like the origin story, and we're going to fly through this because we got like 30 minutes to make this happen. But Fortune 100 executive, best-selling author, Hall of Fame speaker, media powerhouse. Take us back to the beginning. What was the moment or experience that set you on this path?
I didn't know it couldn't be done. No matter what I've done, I don't know that it can't be done. And I also think that anybody can do it. I've been in these boardrooms of some of the biggest companies in the world, and, on television, and have sat in the White House and done this, done that. And I've done it many times, but I'm just a guy up the road from you in South Dakota. And then, yep. One day I'm doing the work in South Dakota, and I realized very early on, I made my first $1 million by the time I was 25, 26. And then I was looking around like, hey, I can do this. I can do more. And I could literally see Iowa from my house, so, kind of live right on the border across the river from me. And that's when I realized, hey, I can go do this anywhere. And I don't have to be just limited by, say, Sioux Falls, South Dakota, which is a great place. And I'm not just saying that in any way, shape, or form, because the businesses there are wonderful and the people are wonderful. But what I mean by that is why do I have to be limited? Why do I have to be, you can't, don't put baby in the corner, so to speak. And,
Wow.
and I've just realized that all my life that, my mom and dad said you could go do anything you could or want to do, go do it. But they didn't give me a pathway or, said this is the path to go do it. And it's always interesting. You get these interviews, Michael, and you've done them. They go, what was your plan to get to where you are today? What plan? Are you kidding me? What plan? There's no plan. But it's, I think it's rooted in values. But, one of the things I try to do, and it gets back to that point, I try not to waste time. Right. I mean, I had a call today with one of my officers in the company that works for me, and she came in late, and then she proceeds to tell me how busy she is, and goes on for about a minute and a half of why she was late, and then says, "And can we shorten the meeting?" I go, "You buried the lead." And she goes, "What do you mean?" I said, "You just buried the lead. Why don't you just come in and say, hey, can we meet this meeting short? And we could have cut out the minute and a half that you just wasted of the 15 minutes that we're meeting." So and by the way, I finally have outlived my father. My father died. Now he had Agent Orange and some other complications because of his military service. But, and when you start to live out relatives that are your parents, you start going, oh man, this is not good. So you're looking around. So, I don't have much time. I just live every day. I go to bed every night, hoping I can hurry up and sleep so I can get up and get going. That's kind of how I look at the day. And no matter what you're doing, you should. That's a good way to do it. I mean, it's also good to just lay around and every once in a while too. But for the most part, that's how I go through it every day.
I I can relate to that, and I mean, you know that I have a ministry background, and so
Yep.
20 some years plus, serving in church leadership. I was a musician really kind of when I got into this, and so I didn't necessarily know that leadership and coaching businesses was going to be part of my future path, per se. But once I got into that path, I wanted to figure out a way to where it's like, okay, I have to make every single day count. Like I have some time I got to figure out how to make up here because I'm kind of showing up a little bit late to the party. But trying to figure out how to optimize every single moment that exists is a huge deal.
Well, and the older you get or the more experience that you get, you realize that you shouldn't have wasted time. You shouldn't have wasted moments. You shouldn't have wasted, brain cells. I mean, you just go like, wow, that was stupid. Don't do that again. That hurt. And and that's kind of how I am with most stuff. It's like, I want to get, I don't want to go through, don't ask me about the weather. Don't ask me to have a cup of coffee. Don't ask me to do all that kind of what I would call the bullshit stuff that we sometimes, package around business. Tell me what you want. Let's get to it. And because I'm going to walk into a meeting and literally in seconds go to the last page and figure out what it is. Because that's just, I don't have time. I get the other stuff. I've been through, you bought and sold hundreds of businesses for billions of bucks or managed multi-billion-dollar companies or just been in all these situations, I always tell people I'm the Forrest Gump of business, it's like, because Forrest Gump in the movie, he was there, he was with Johnson, he was with Kennedy, he was with Nixon, he was always in the wrong place at the right time. And, so it was always interesting. So I consider myself much the same way. So, and just like I've been on the reciprocal of that, I've been sitting in executive boardrooms with the CEO of a publicly traded company of billions and billions, $185 billion company. And then that guy could open up a ring binder back then, open up the ring binder, go to page 37 and find the one mistake or the one weak point out of the whole thing, So, but those are better conversations. Those are the best conversations to start to have, those transparent, without filters kinds of things. And the more I've done of that, the more I like that. And some people don't like that. They don't like having the direct conversation. They don't like having what you call difficult conversations. But quite frankly, those are the ones that are the best. I mean, that's healthy tension's a good thing.
I couldn't agree more. And you find out who's with you and who's not with you really, really fast. And I think that's such an important thing to know.
Yeah, but I don't know if Michael, that's a good point. I don't know if that's always who's with you, but who gets it and who doesn't. And that, so I don't think most people wake up and say, I can't wait to be mean. I can't wait to be stupid, right? There are some of those people. We know those. But most people, I always say, like, it's the rule of thirds. A third of them get it right away. A third eventually get it. And a third never do. So I'm going to find the third that don't get it, right? The third, that you say aren't with you, right? And move them out, move them on, because you waste time with them, right? And a lot of times we build businesses, or even let's talk about talent development. We focus in our talent development based on the bottom third. Why would we do that? As Bill Murray once said in the movie Scrooge, scrape them off, Claire, scrape them off, meaning off his body. He meant the bottom of his shoe. Now, he's this mean old Scrooge kind of guy, and I don't mean to, but that's my point is, I'm not trying to be mean by that, but what I mean is they're not right for that. And if they're not right for that, let's move them on. Let's help them. By the way, that's helping them, quite frankly.
All right. So you get this book out. Great book, by the way. So think big, act bigger. If I have it right, it's all about breaking through limitations, pushing boundaries, that type of thing, right?
Yeah.
What is the biggest misconception that you feel like business leaders have about thinking big?
That they make assumptions about what they know. And most leaders, the best leaders in the world I've ever seen in my life are the ones, I don't know what I don't know, right? We know certain things, we know certain rules, but that doesn't mean the rule's applying here, right? It doesn't, there's certain things that happen. So you should always go at things with a total sense of awareness, or being unaware, because how surprised will you be if you're doing that? If you already think, it's like, if you already think a certain way because of this experience, well, that guides you, but don't lock it in. And sometimes people I've had so many people who've turned down business with me because they thought it was this, right? Or they thought it was this, or they think I'm, because I've been on, I'll point it out, because I've been a judge on Celebrity Apprentice for 3 years. I'm a Trumpster. Oh, come on, man. Are you kidding me? I'm going to stand up to him or anybody else. Are you nuts? Don't assume because, or that I'm this big, 250-pound guy, 6'3", that I'm this, Mack truck. I'm a teddy bear, and they dress like a Mack truck. Yeah. But, so, I could be a Mack truck, but I'm also that, so don't assume. And I think that's the biggest mistake we make. We make assumptions based on certain things. And that's just stupid, right? You see it all the time, though. You see it all the time.
Okay. So if that's the case, then what is the one move that you think people should make today to start acting bigger?
Look for the ponies. There's an old story about Ronald Reagan. He's one of the best storytellers. I love storytellers. I love people, as a Hall of Fame speaker. I mean, I just love great storytellers, and Norman Vincent Peale and, Michael Brown, who was a pastor after Norman Vincent Peale at the Marble Church. Yeah, I love good storytellers, and a lot of storytellers that people don't know, but, yeah, he once told a story about an optimistic cowboy and a pessimistic cowboy, and make it short, the ranch hand said, "Hey, go take that pile of manure over there and move it over here." And the pessimistic cowboy was like, "Oh my gosh, it's going to smell. It's going to get all over us. It's a lot of work. I don't like it." And then he looks over the optimistic cowboy. He's already into it, up to his elbows. He's throwing the manure with his hands, didn't even use the shovel. And he goes, "What are you doing, man? What are you doing?" And he goes, "Hey, with a pile of shit this big, there's got to be a pony in here somewhere, And so I think we should be looking for those ponies. Find the things that we could to do, and then you make the decision: is it big enough scale for you? Does it get me to where I want to go? Does it meet my conditions of satisfaction? Those are the things. But if you don't go looking for the ponies, you don't get to go for the ride.
Yeah, I think looking for the ponies has been one of our secret sauces, I think, because when we started off this whole thing, which is still like my main thing, by the way. So being the founder and CEO of Teams.coach, 5 years from now, if you want to know like the thing that I want to be known for, I want to be the team whisperer, like when people are figuring out how to scale their team and fix their structure and actually get their team to actually perform at higher levels than they ever have before. I want to be the guy that people are calling,
Yeah, without question. You want that to happen. Yeah, without question. Yeah.
But looking for ponies, I can honestly tell you, like the Catalyst Co., our small business vertical, and then also our agency, those weren't necessarily things that were built by designs. Those were ponies.
Yeah. That's exactly. So you got to go looking for those and find those every so often. And when you find them, hang on to them and ride them like the Dickens. It's awesome.
Yeah, I love that. It's great analogy. So now on this, learning so much from you, specifically when it comes to like the power of brand and visibility, and we're talking about podcasts and all this stuff. But um, like you've been kind of branded as, and I don't think that you'll actually admit this, maybe you will, but you've been branded as kind of like the celebrity CMO.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, the
It's
Forbes magazine once called me the celebrity CMO and put me on the front cover. And it was when I was doing all these television shows and so forth. When I realized early on that, hey, content's king, but activation's queen. But, I've decided that context is the kingdom. Where you put that content and the framework of that content is really important. And so, yeah, they did. Although, in the corporate world, my corporate people didn't like it. But hey, look, it was free media. It's a tool you can use. And now I think it's more important than ever. Content. Content leads to your community, which has always been the case. But used to be advertising. And now it's really content. You have to really deliver content. And I think it's more important. Yesterday, as I mentioned, where I was at yesterday, was at New York Stock Exchange. And we talked about right now, the New York Stock Exchange, it represents 2,200 companies with $42 trillion in market cap and 44 million employees. They predict that's huge, right? It's amazing. Wow. But in 10 years, they expect to double that market cap to $80 trillion. But get this, Michael, 22 million employees, half the number of employees. So whether you're an employee, whether you're a company, you got to get the content. You have to have this content. You have to develop this content because the game is changing for us in less than 10 years. Now, I won't probably be doing business in 10 years. Hopefully will be retired or, living a life of luxury on my ranch or in South Dakota. But, the trust is the new medium. Okay. Trust is the new currency, and content's the way that you build that, because you build those communities, and from those communities, you're going to be able to make commerce or money. And so that's just awesome. And that's the new formula. And that's what I'm out there advocating. So I'm talking to everybody about building a podcast, everybody about building a TV show. I just got off a phone with a fast channel, getting our content on there and what we had to do to, get it up to the level that they would take it. Because the way in which you can develop content now, this is a TV show. What we're doing right now, it's a TV show.
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of just piggybacking on this, just for the sake of clarity, I want to know, like, what's the most critical branding move that business owners should be making right now? And I'm thinking that you're probably going to piggyback on this content idea.
I will, but you have to solve the fundamental issue first. And that's, what's your brand promise? Because I think a lot of companies are going through this thought of what's my brand, changing the brand. Brand used to be brand's something that we always put on a cow, occasionally a horse. That's where the word brand comes from. And then it transferred to the identification of a company, and, it became the brand. The identification of cow, on the side, or a brand on the side of a bovine, that's a brand, ownership. And now you really got to think about what's your brand promise. And so once you figure that out, then the content, because then it's about scale. Then it's about, how do I get as many people as possible? Now, not so much about eyeballs and ears, because I think that's an old game. That left us years ago, and it was just now catching up. It's a game about hearts and minds. And it was about hearts and minds then, we just didn't know it. And so we had to get all of these followers, we had to get all these fans, we had to get all this advertising to get in front of eyeballs and ears in order to get down to this funnel and into a pipeline. And now people are much more select, deselect. Think about the things you opt out of, don't want to hear, don't want to see, turn off, filter out. Well, you've got to get to that. So that's where I say it's eyeballs, and it's about hearts and minds rather than eyeballs and ears.
Man, that's incredible. So in the wake of that, and even some of the things that you're doing with the C-Suite network, what are you doing to making sure that your message is actually penetrating and getting through some of the noise?
Well, the key is it's got to be good content, right? It's got to be valuable content. So you have to really spend some time in saying, hey, what do my fans, what do my friends, what do my community want? And that's what I got to give them. And you check in with them and making sure that you're giving them, and then get the feedback back. Did you like it, don't like it? What can I change? And, and I stopped worrying about how many views, how many clicks, right? All I want is have that experience so that every time I have an interaction with you, that at least once during that year, you say that was worth the money. That was worth it right there. Now, if I can try and do my very best to do that every time we get together, uh, game, set, match. You'll become an ambassador. You'll start, as you said earlier, telling people, hey, I got this guest coming on. Hey, I've got this person. That's what you want. That's what you want. And to do that, you got to over deliver on the promise, but you got to know what the promise is.
Killer. I love it. Now you mentioned New York Stock Exchange. You talked about just how things are changing and how innovation, growth, scalability, all these things are happening and disruptions happening faster than it's ever happened before. What is the biggest mistake leaders make when facing disruption?
Ooh, that's a good thing. Okay, so I think it's important when disruption, you want to kind of look out, right? And you want to look, oh my, where can I do and go there? I think you have to look in at that point. It's got to be from the core. So it's got to be your values and what drives you, right? And by following the values, you'll find the place that you should go and play in this disruption. Now, let's keep in mind that many times we get really scared. And I'm not saying inward like, oh, let's restrict ourselves. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying you got to get to your core because you're going to get knocked off balance. And they teach you a lot in sports. When you're knocked off your balance, strengthen your core. So if you're strengthening and true to your core, you'll be able to handle anything. I was talking with a guy in the marketplace, and he's one of these Wall Street guys, which they drive me nuts because they're always worried about what the market does every day. And most of us, I'm from South Dakota. What do we care? I don't know what the market is. I care about corn, I care about beef, I care about all those things. But I'm not care about the market. I'm care about what I pay at the market, right, so to speak. Right. Anyway, but I said, I just turned to him. I said, Eric, you worry about that crap too much. I said, he goes, what do you mean? It could be a bad year. I said, well, in bad years, never waste a good crisis. There's still businesses that do great. And some of the biggest businesses that we've ever seen in the history of the world were born during the biggest economic crises in the world. And I can give you a whole bunch of examples of those during, the depressions or during recessions, during oil crises of great businesses that were born. And even back in 2008, Airbnb, Uber. Who would have thought that those two businesses would have been born? Who would have thought that, in 2008, oh my gosh, I'm going to let somebody rent my house and sit naked on my couch and I'm going to let them pay me money for it. I mean, you wouldn't think like that. Or who would have thought that you would have a car service that would pick up your daughter who's been drinking, or out for a good time and you don't know their names. Are you nuts? And yet you pay higher than cab prices for it. So, there's a lot of businesses that were born because they serve great needs. So never waste a good crisis was part of that discussion.
I love it. So there's a bigger idea though, is like, you'll hear me talk a lot about this idea that people technically they'll embrace change when the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of change.
That's a lot. Yeah.
Right.
So that's certainly true in the software business, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like sometimes you get forced into it, and sometimes you get pulled into a headlock to where finally you have to, cry uncle and go, okay, I'm giving in. I'm willing to embrace the change. But how can people build a culture that thrives in change rather than resist it?
Well, get back to values. Again, getting back to values. So my last book was The Hero Factor. And I talk about businesses that have values at the core, that they put people above profits, that they focus in on the values of the business over everything else, and that's what drives them. Well, as a result, what happens to those businesses? They gross more money than anybody else. They net more money than anybody else in their industry. They have employees who are more engaged when 53% of employees are not engaged in the business today. They have vendors who want to do business with them. They have greater customer satisfaction. They have all these things that are going for them. And at the same time, they're the kind of leaders when you see them walk through Omaha, walk through St. Louis, or walk through Washington, D.C. or New York City, everybody goes, there goes a hero business, right? So
I love that.
When all that's there, I mean, it's just, let's, get back to the basics. I think, that's the thing that sometimes we forget. We're trying all these new things, or there's new stuff. And it really, people now, like, I was at a conference here not too long ago, somebody who said, it was a sales conference, it's all about the relationships. And I got up and said, when did it stop? When did it stop being about the relationships? That's a big part of it.
Yeah, that's been huge. Even one of our frameworks we take executive teams through, the hero factor was a pretty big like echoing voice in just kind of confirmation that we're doing some of the right things. Because what we found is that organizational leaders are really strategy minded, meaning they wake up every single day and you're thinking about, okay, what's all the stuff I got to get done today? Yeah. Rather than thinking about who do I need to be today? Like, what are we?
I love that. I mean, you should start off your morning thinking about what are the 3 to 5 things that I can do today that get me to the biggest 3 or 5 things I need to do for the year. If you just wake up I was taught that way, what was called a management action report. And so every day I frame my day based on what are the 3 most important things that I need to get done that get me to where I want to go. And if you focus that way, the rest of the stuff you look at and it's like, maybe I'll get to it. I'll get to it. I mean, just get to those 3 things. Just get to those. And if you're really good, get to 5. But those 3 things. I mean, that could be the presentation or the outline you have to do, the call you have to make to the sales. It might be call disgruntled customer. It might be whatever those things are. But sometimes we get in the minutia of I got to respond to all these emails. No, I don't. I've got all these meetings on my calendar. So what? Cancel them. Right? If it doesn't lead to the 3 things, what are you doing?
Well, yeah, it's because when we think about, mindset and vision, your strategy doesn't matter at all if it's not actually leading towards the vision that you want to be 5 years from now.
Without question. And where do you want, so I look at, and then my time's related to that. I mean, I don't want to spend time on this other stuff. I just tell people, nope, I'm out, done. I just, I'm leaving the meeting. You guys are, today I was on a call and the employees were talking about their ears. Like, what do I want to be in this call for? I'm here for another meeting and we're waiting for somebody and you're talking about your ears. I'm not interested.
All right. We're going to land the plane. You ready for this?
Yeah, sure.
All right. If you could leave business owners and executives with one unfiltered piece of advice, no BS about leadership today, what would it be? Go faster.
Go faster. Everybody talks about failing fast. It ain't about that. It's about winning fast. So you're going to fail. Okay? You're going to fail. Just get over it. Know it. No one's going to die. So the key thing is go faster to win. That's it. Win faster.
I love it. Thanks for making time for me today, man.
Thank you. This is fun. Let's do it again. This is the kind of great stuff you get on C-Suite Radio and C-Suite TV. Love it. There's a plug.
There we go. And you get to listen to the Level Up Leader podcast on the C-Suite Network. So thanks for having me, Jeff.
Cheers.
That was Jeffrey Hazlett, a true maverick in the world of business and leadership. If you took away anything from this episode, let it be this. Thinking big isn't a strategy, it's a mindset. And Jeffrey lives that out every single day. If this conversation challenged your thinking or sparked new ideas, help us spread the message. Please like, subscribe, and follow the show wherever you get your podcasts. Drop a review on Apple or Spotify. It helps us get more leaders like this to discover more powerful conversations. And don't forget to follow us on all of our social for all of our clips, the tools, and behind-the-scenes insight. And you can definitely learn more about Jeffrey's work on Go Big at the C-Suite Network. So thanks for tuning in to the Level Up Leader podcast. I'm your host, Michael King, reminding you to stay bold, stay focused, and keep leveling up.